Hello, my friends. Welcome you to this new podcast episode. I'm your host, Hallen.
And I'm Rock. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to dive into this episode, so let's get started.
So, Rock, what we are going to learn in this episode?
Well, as you know, we not only teach English, but also try to add value to your daily life. In this episode, we're going to explore the true reasons why listening is important for learning English.
Yes, we will surely talk about this, but first, we need to understand the importance of listening. Why is listening so important, Rock?
Great question, Hallen. Listening is one of the key skills for language learning.
That's right. If you're not a good listener, you can't be a good speaker. Listening is the foundation of effective communication, isn't it?
Absolutely, Hallen. When you listen carefully, you not only understand what the other person is saying, but also pick up on their emotions, intentions, and the deeper meaning behind their words. It helps build stronger connections.
Exactly. Listening shows respect and empathy. It's not just about hearing words, but about being fully present and understanding the message. So, in this episode, we're going to uncover how listening can transform the way we connect with others. Let's dive in.
Absolutely. Do you remember when we were children, how we started learning our own language? It all began with listening. We listened to our parents, siblings, and everyone around us.
Exactly. Most of us think that listening isn't as important as speaking, but in reality, listening is a powerful tool for learning and growing. It allows you to understand context, pick up on subtle details, and truly engage with the world around you in ways you can't even imagine.
That's so true, Hallen. Listening is often underrated, but it's the secret ingredient to meaningful communication and personal growth. In this episode, we'll explore some practical ways to sharpen your listening skills and see the benefits it can bring to your life.
Now let's talk about how listening helps in understanding grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure naturally.
Well, listening helps us learn vocabulary in a very natural and effective way. When we hear words used in context repeatedly, it's easier for us to understand their meanings and remember them.
For example, hearing phrases like, "I'm absolutely thrilled," or "it's a bit tricky," allows us to understand how words like thrilled or tricky are used in real-life situations. Plus, it's not just about words. It's about tone, expressions, and emotions that bring them to life.
Great point, Hallen. Listening exposes us to correct grammar and sentence structure without us even realizing it. Instead of memorizing rules, we pick up patterns. For instance, by listening to sentences like, "She has been working all day," we understand the use of the present perfect continuous tense naturally.
That's so true. It's like learning by immersion, the way children learn their first language.
Exactly. Listening helps build a foundation for both understanding and using the language confidently.
Another excellent benefit of listening is that when you listen to native speakers again and again, your brain is being trained to process the language more effectively.
How is my brain being trained? Can you explain more?
Let me explain. Normally, when you listen to or talk with a native speaker, it can feel challenging to understand them because they often speak faster, like in movies, for example. However, if you keep listening regularly, your brain starts adapting to their speed and rhythm. Over time, it becomes easier to catch their words and understand them, even in fast-paced conversations.
So listening frequently helps my brain get used to the language's natural flow.
Exactly. It's like practice for your brain. The more you expose yourself to native speakers, the more naturally your brain processes their speech. This makes real-life interactions with native speakers or watching movies without subtitles much smoother.
Do you know, Hallen, listening can also help us improve our pronunciation?
Absolutely, Rock. When you listen carefully to native speakers, you can hear how they pronounce words, including the subtle sounds and stress patterns that make their speech natural. For instance, you'll notice how they emphasize certain syllables or connect words smoothly.
That's interesting. So by listening, we can mimic their way of speaking?
Exactly. It's like having a pronunciation guide in real time. The more you listen, the more you can replicate those sounds. Over time, this helps your pronunciation become clearer and more accurate, making it easier for others to understand you.
I see. So, listening isn't just about understanding, it's also a tool to sound more fluent.
Why does listening directly in English help you think in English instead of translating?
That's a great question, Helen. When you listen directly in English, your brain starts associating words and phrases with their meanings without relying on your native language. It's like creating a direct connection between the language and your thoughts.
So it skips the step of translating in your head?
Exactly. Translating can slow you down and even lead to errors because languages don't always match word for word. But when you think in English, you process the language faster and more naturally, which makes your speaking and understanding much smoother.
That makes sense. It's like immersing yourself in the language completely.
Right. And the more you practice listening in English, the more your brain gets used to this way of thinking. It's a powerful way to become more fluent and confident.
And here's another fascinating aspect of listening. Did you know it also helps you expand your cultural understanding?
Oh, that's interesting. How does listening help with cultural understanding, Helen?
Well, when you listen to native speakers, especially through podcasts, movies, or conversations, you don't just hear words. You get a sense of how people express emotions, tell stories, or even make jokes. For instance, you might notice how humor or politeness differs in English compared to your native language.
That's a great point. It's like you're learning the unspoken rules of communication, which can make you more relatable and confident when speaking English.
Exactly. Understanding cultural nuances through listening can help you communicate more naturally and avoid misunderstandings. For example, in English, people often use indirect expressions like, "Would you mind?" or "Could you please?" to sound polite. Listening helps you pick up on these subtleties.
I can see how that would be useful. So, listening isn't just about language, it's also about connecting with the culture behind the language.
Absolutely, Rock. And here's something else to consider. Listening can also make learning more enjoyable.
Oh, definitely. Listening to your favorite songs, watching movies, or following interesting podcasts makes the process fun. It doesn't feel like studying at all.
Right. When you enjoy what you're listening to, you're more likely to stay consistent. And consistency is key when it comes to improving any skill, especially language learning.
So, Helen, we've talked about how listening improves grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and even cultural understanding. What's the best way to incorporate listening into our daily routines?
Good question. Start small but stay consistent. Listen to something you enjoy every day, be it a podcast, a song, or a short video. Gradually, you can challenge yourself with more complex content.
And don't forget to stay patient. Language learning takes time, but the more you listen, the easier it becomes.
Exactly, Rock. Listening is a journey, not a race. And the best part? Every step brings you closer to fluency.